She's actually reportedly complaining about how hard it is for women in America with the double standards.
Look at Oprah, how hard it is for her.
She built a brand on kindness, a smile that felt safe, a laugh that filled living rooms across America. For years, Ellen DeGeneres wasn't just a talk show host. She was an image, a feeling, a symbol people trusted.
I know him very well, whose sister worked for her, who said, you were not allowed to make eye contact with Ellen in the halls of that show. If you saw her, this is not a nice person.
But what happens when that image starts to crack? Because here's the thing nobody expected. The conversation didn't start on the news. It didn't begin with an official report. It exploded during a raw, unfiltered moment between two men known for saying what others won't, Dillon and Joe Rogan. No script, no filters, just questions, and a tone that made people stop what they were doing and listen. And when Tim leaned forward and started connecting dots, past controversies, sudden moves, powerful circles, something shifted. Because it wasn't just gossip anymore, it felt like a puzzle. And suddenly, millions of people were asking the same question at the same time. What if the story we've been told isn't the full story?
I called her out. I was like, Ellen's not that nice.
This was after you went on the show?
After I went on the show. Ran into her like backstage. It was like an awkward thing and like the producers were really scared. I was like, what's going on? They were like, that was not supposed to happen. We're gonna get in trouble.
But before we go any further, there's something important to understand. This isn't about proving crimes. It's about exploring claims, timelines, and public conversations that have made people question what's real and what's carefully hidden. Because sometimes the truth isn't loud, it's quiet, and it waits until the right moment to be heard. For nearly 2 decades, Ellen DeGeneres was untouchable. That's not an exaggeration. Her show wasn't just popular, it was dominant. Daytime television practically revolved around her. Presidents sat in her chair. Celebrities lined up for a chance to dance on her stage. Her slogan, "Be kind," became more than branding. It became identity.
DeGeneres, I thought she'd fled America for good, at least until Trump's presidency was over. But Ellen and wife Portia de Rossi have backtracked on their plan to stay in the UK in a bid to escape Donald Trump.
But behind every perfect image, there's pressure. And behind every long-running empire, there are stories that don't always make it to the surface. Long before any major headlines, whispers existed, staff members quietly talking, small complaints, stories that didn't seem big enough to break through the noise. At first, they were easy to ignore, until they weren't. In 2020, everything changed. Multiple former employees came forward describing a workplace that didn't match the smiling image on screen. Words like toxic, fear, and intimidation started appearing more and more, and suddenly the gap between public's perception and private experience didn't feel like a rumor anymore. It felt real. The show's reputation took a hit. Ratings dropped.
It's a rough one now because she was running Abu Ghraib in the back of her show. She's out there dancing with Kristen Bell, and in the back there's people that are getting up on the rack.
And eventually, after 17 years, the show ended. Now, on the surface, that looked like the end of the story. But here's where things get complicated. Because endings in Hollywood are rarely just endings. They're transitions. And sometimes they're distractions. Fast forward a few years. The spotlight had dimmed, the headlines slowed down, and Ellen, once at the center of everything, stepped back from the chaos.
Her and Bush are jumping around. I mean,
That's right, she was buddies with Bush.
Then came a move that raised eyebrows. A quiet relocation, a new life across the ocean, away from the constant buzz of American media. At first, it seemed simple, a celebrity choosing privacy. That's not unusual. But timing is everything. And this is exactly what caught Dillon's attention. Because while most people saw a lifestyle change, he saw a timeline. And when he brought it up on Joe Rogan's show, the conversation didn't feel casual anymore. It felt investigative. What made her leave right then? Tim questioned. Not accusing, not confirming, just asking. And sometimes the right question is more powerful than any answer. Because around the same time, public interest in the case of Jeffrey Epstein was rising again. Documents, names, connections, a web of powerful individuals that had been discussed for years was suddenly back in the spotlight. Now, let's be clear. Being mentioned in any document or investigation does not mean guilt. That distinction matters. It's critical.
And she actually has the nerve to say that she was run out of Hollywood. This person
with
and
she with $100 million in her pocket.
450 million, according to Forbes. That's a low estimate. You haven't been canceled if you are doing a Netflix special. She got 20 million for the one before this. I'm sure she's fine.
But what Tim Dillon pointed out wasn't about guilt. It was about curiosity. Why are so many powerful names even appearing in these conversations? And why does it feel like the full story is always just out of reach? As the episode continued, Joe Rogan didn't interrupt. He listened, and that silence said a lot. Because Joe Rogan has built his entire platform on letting conversations breathe, letting people speak fully. And in that moment, you could feel the weight of what was being discussed. Tim wasn't shouting, he wasn't making wild claims. He was connecting patterns: Hollywood, power, silence, and the strange way certain stories explode while others disappear.
There was this era where all the late night hosts, we didn't call each other up, we didn't talk to each other. There were very few of us, and everyone had their little fiefdom, and we were constantly peering over our stone walls at each other.
Do you know what I find weird about that?
You're not allowed to talk on your interview.
It's the opposite of stand-up comedy. Alan Havey said this wonderful thing to me. He's an older guy. He was in Mad Men. You might have seen him. Grey-haired.
Of course, Alan Havey, very funny
He's
man.
incredible. But he said this thing to me about comedy. He said, we're out for ourselves, but in it together. You escape competition through authenticity.
Yes.
No one else can beat you at being you. And it strikes me that the late night hosts were all the same, and they just couldn't see that. No one had told them, oh, you can all be friends. There's nothing you can do, Letterman can do, and Jay Leno can't do what you do. And it was such a different skill set, but no one told you that. You could all be friends. You could have gone out for drinks every night.
It wouldn't have happened. The personalities were not such that people would be going out for drinks together. It was a different time, and I won't get into specifics, but it wasn't going to happen.
But here's the twist, Tim added at one point, leaning back. It's not just about one person. That's when the conversation shifted from Ellen specifically to something much bigger. A system. Because when multiple controversies happen across years, different people, different industries, but the reactions look the same, people start to notice. First, denial, then silence, then a carefully controlled narrative, and finally, distraction.
She's around for too long.
James
Fallon,
Corden.
all these people, walk away. You've been famous forever. Walk away. Like, eventually, everybody, they're just going to figure it out.
Tim Dillon's argument wasn't that he had proof of crimes. It was that the pattern itself is worth questioning. And that's what made the moment so powerful. Because it didn't tell people what to think, it forced them to think. But what nobody expected was how fast the clip spread. Within hours, it was everywhere. TikTok, YouTube, X, millions of views. And with every share, the conversation grew louder. Some people agreed, others pushed back hard. And then came something even more interesting: fact checkers. Articles appeared quickly, clarifying what was known, what wasn't, and what had been taken out of context. And again, that's important. In a world full of misinformation, clarity matters. But here's the uncomfortable part. The more people were told, there's nothing here, the more they asked, then why does it feel like there is? Not because of evidence, but because of history. Because we've seen powerful figures protected before. We've seen stories ignored until they couldn't be ignored anymore. And that memory, it doesn't go away. For Ellen, this moment wasn't just another headline. It was a reopening of everything. The past, the accusations, the questions about who she really was behind the scenes, and whether the be kind image was always real or carefully maintained. Now imagine being in her position, years of building a legacy, one of the most recognizable faces in television, and suddenly the conversation isn't about your success anymore, it's about your silence. Because here's what hit the hardest. Not what Tim Dillon said, not what Joe Rogan allowed, but what Ellen didn't say. No direct response, no detailed explanation, just distance. And in today's world, silence doesn't calm things down, it fuels them. The emotional weight of this is something people often overlook.
First day of work, not making this up because there was already about 5 writers there when I got hired. I walk into her office, which was the writer's room. It was like a loungy kind of writer's room. And I walk in and I'm standing in the middle of the floor and she goes, "Oh, we got the new writer. Let's take a look at you." Okay, turn around.
Because behind the headlines, there's a human being. A person who went from being loved by millions to being questioned by the same audience. That shift isn't small, it's massive. It affects everything: reputation, relationships, legacy. And even if every claim is unproven, the doubt alone can change how someone is seen forever. Friends become cautious, opportunities become limited, and the public becomes divided. Some defend you no matter what, others walk away completely. And the hardest part? You can't control which side grows faster. But here's where the story becomes even more thought-provoking, because this isn't just about Ellen DeGeneres, it's about how we process power, how we react to controversy, and how quickly public opinion can shift when trust is broken or even questioned. Tim Dillon didn't present a conclusion, he presented discomfort, and that discomfort is what keeps this story alive. Because people aren't just asking, is it true? They're asking, what else don't we know? And now we're here, at that strange point where nothing is fully confirmed, but nothing feels completely settled either. The conversation is still moving, still evolving, still growing.
But when you don't get over your grievances and you let it fester and resent and take it out on people, and then I think that that's something that has to be, I mean, there really does have to be a coming to Jesus moment where you have to, I mean, literally or figuratively, where you can just get over this stuff and then start over and say, yeah, I was whether you want to use the C word or the B word, and admit that and move on.
And whether you believe Tim Dillon raised valid concerns or crossed a line, one thing is undeniable. He made people look closer. He made people question more. And in a world where most stories fade in a day or two, this one didn't. So what happens next? Does more information come out? Does the conversation fade like so many others before it? Or does this become another chapter in a much larger story about Hollywood, power, and the truth behind closed doors? Because history has shown us something very clear. Silence doesn't last forever. Eventually, something breaks, and when it does, everything changes at once. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Tim Dillon was just asking questions or hinting at something deeper? Do you believe the silence means anything, or is this just another moment that got blown out of proportion? Drop your thoughts below, and if you're following stories like this, the ones that don't have easy answers, make sure you stay tuned. Because this might not be the end. It might just be the beginning. Because if you really sit with everything that's happened, the timeline, the conversations, the silence, it starts to feel less like a random controversy and more like something unfinished. And unfinished stories don't stay quiet forever. Think about it. A global superstar like Ellen DeGeneres doesn't just fade out of public life without people asking questions. Not after decades at the top. Not after building a brand that was supposed to represent something bigger than entertainment. Kindness, trust, authenticity. Those aren't just words, they're promises. And when people feel like those promises might not have been real, the reaction isn't mild, it's emotional, it's personal. Because millions of viewers didn't just watch Ellen, they believed in her. They invited her into their homes every single day. So when cracks appear, it doesn't feel like celebrity gossip. it feels like betrayal.
I don't think that I'm that good that I could come out here every day for 17 years and fool you. This is me, and my intention is to always be the best person I can be.
And that's exactly why the conversation around Tim Dillon and Joe Rogan hit differently. It wasn't polished. It wasn't filtered through PR teams or carefully written statements. It was raw, messy, uncomfortable. And those kinds of conversations, they stick with people. Because deep down, audiences can tell the difference between something that's controlled and something that's real. But here's the part that makes this even more intense. What if nothing else comes out? What if there are no major revelations, no confirmed reports, no official statements that change everything? Just silence. Because in today's world, silence creates its own story. People start filling in the gaps themselves. Speculation grows, theories spread, and over time, perception becomes reality, whether it's accurate or not. That's the danger of moments like this, not just for Ellen, but for anyone in that position. Because once doubt enters the conversation, it doesn't leave easily. At the same time, it's important to stay grounded. Not every question leads to a shocking truth. Not every connection means something deeper. And not every viral moment reflects reality. That balance matters, because while curiosity pushes stories forward, assumptions can take them too far, and that's where things get complicated. Still, one thing is undeniable. The way people view fame is changing. The way they look at power is changing. And the way they respond to silence is definitely changing. There was a time when a celebrity could ride out a controversy, wait a few weeks, and everything would go back to normal. That time, it's gone. Now, people want answers. They want transparency. They want to feel like what they're seeing is real. And when they don't get that, they keep digging. So maybe this story isn't really about proving anything. Maybe it's about a shift in how audiences think, a shift in how trust works, and a shift in how quickly a legacy can be questioned, even after years of success. Because no matter where you stand on this, whether you believe Tim Dillon was exposing something important or just raising questions that got taken too far, you can't deny the impact. He changed the conversation. And once a conversation changes, everything that follows starts to look different. And now, the spotlight is still there, waiting, watching. Because stories like this don't end with one podcast clip. They evolve. They come back, sometimes when you least expect it. So the real question isn't just about what was said, it's about what happens next. Will more voices speak up? Will new information surface? Or will this become another mystery that fades into the background, leaving only questions behind? One thing is certain. People are paying attention now, closer than ever before. And in a world where attention is power, that alone can change everything. So stay aware, stay curious, and most importantly, don't stop asking questions, because the biggest stories, they're usually the ones that don't have clear answers right away. And this one still doesn't. And maybe that's where this story really leaves us, not with answers, but with questions that refuse to disappear. Because when you strip everything back, the headlines, the clips, the viral moments, the arguments online, what you're left with is something much more human: trust, reputation, and the fragile line between who someone appears to be and who people believe they really are. For years, she stood on a stage built for laughter, a place where millions came not just to be entertained, but to feel safe for a few minutes in a chaotic world. That kind of influence is powerful, and with power comes something heavier than fame: responsibility. But the moment doubt enters the picture, everything changes. And that's the part people struggle with the most, because it's not just about one person anymore. It's about how quickly we shift from admiration to suspicion, from celebration to questioning every detail we thought we understood. One conversation, one clip, one interpretation, and suddenly the entire narrative feels different. But here's the truth that often gets lost in all of this noise. The internet rarely gives you the full picture. It gives you fragments, pieces of dialogue, edited moments, emotional reactions, and then it asks you to build a complete story out of incomplete information. And that's where things can get dangerous. Because once a story becomes viral, it stops being just a story. It becomes a belief system. People choose sides. They defend, they attack, they argue, often without ever stepping back and asking a simple question: what do we actually know for certain? And in moments like this, certainty is rare. What we do know is that fame is not as clean as it looks from the outside. It never has been. Behind every polished image, there are layers the public never sees: pressure, conflict, ambition, mistakes, and sometimes misunderstandings that grow far beyond their original size. But what we also know is this: not everything that spreads online is proof of anything real. Sometimes it's speculation, sometimes it's emotion, and sometimes it's just a story that grows because people want it to mean something bigger than it actually does.
And maybe that's the real reflection here. Not just about one person or one interview or one viral moment, but about us, the audience, the watchers, the ones trying to make sense of it all in real time. Because in the end, we're the ones shaping what these stories become. So before you accept the loudest opinion, pause. Before you share the most shocking claim, think. And before you decide the full truth is already in front of you, remember how often stories like this evolve over time. Because sometimes the most important part of any controversy isn't what's said in the beginning. It's what we learn later when the noise finally settles. And until that moment comes, all we really have is perspective. So maybe the real question isn't what happened. Maybe it's, why are we so quick to believe we already know?